Globe goes to Glenn Close, the wife.
At 77, Glenn Close is finally revealing the shocking truth about her life. You have seen her on the big screen, but you don't know how she survived a cult, a plane crash, and built her career with sheer grit. And that's only the beginning. The choices she made, the risks she took, and the truths she uncovered shaped one of the most incredible lives in showbiz. Let's dive into what hasn't been told until now. Glenn Close was born in 1947 in Greenwich, Connecticut. She spent her early years living on her grandfather's estate. Her childhood seemed perfect at first, surrounded by the wealth and charm of New England. But life took a turn that shaped her future. Her father, William Taliaferro Close, was a respected doctor who worked for Congolese leader Mobutu Sese Seko. Because of his work, the family often traveled back and forth between Africa and the United States. This constant moving made Glenn's early years unstable. She struggled to make lasting friends and never felt like she truly had a home. When Glenn was 7, her life changed completely. Her father joined the Moral Rearmament (MRA), a strict religious group. The MRA started as an anti-war movement in 1938, but later became something Glenn would call a cult. The group had strict rules about how its members lived. They controlled personal beliefs and even emotions. For 15 years, Glenn grew up in this environment, where she was taught to feel guilty for natural desires and could not trust her own instincts. She later described the group's leader as an old man in a wheelchair with small glasses and a hooked nose. The MRA faced criticism from many, including the Catholic Church, which warned people not to join because of its controversial ideas. At age 27, Glenn found her way into professional theater, finally breaking free from her controlled upbringing. Her journey started in an unusual way. During her senior year of college, she called the theater department and asked for help with auditions. This bold decision led to her first role in a professional play, Love for Love, directed by Hal Prince. The show ran for just 24 performances, but it gave Glenn her first taste of freedom and artistic expression. She went on to appear in other productions, like Rex in 1976 and The Crucifer of Blood in the late 1970s, building her reputation as a talented stage actress. Glenn Close didn't start acting in movies until she was 35. Her first film was The World, According to Garp in 1982. In this movie, she played the mother of Robin Williams' character, even though she was only a few years older than him. Her performance was so good that she got her first Oscar nomination. This role showed everyone how talented she was, even though she was new to movies. Before this, she had been performing on Broadway, so she already had a lot of acting experience. After her first movie, she became a big name in Hollywood very quickly. In her first 3 years, she got 3 Oscar nominations. In The World, According to Garp, her character was a feminist and a successful writer, and her relationship with her son was complicated and emotional. People loved how real and deep her performance felt. Her success in this movie helped her transition from Broadway to Hollywood. In 1983, she acted in The Big Chill. She played a woman named Sarah Cooper, who was dealing with her past relationships during a college reunion. This movie became really popular, and it even won a big award at the Toronto Film Festival. A lot of people remember this movie because of its music. The actors listened to Motown songs while filming certain scenes, which added to the film's emotional impact. Glenn's performance earned her another Oscar nomination and made her even more respected as an actress. The next year, she acted in The Natural with Robert Redford. In this movie, she played a character named Iris Gaines. Even though she didn't have a lot of screen time, she made every moment count. There's a scene in a hospital where her acting, especially her expressions, moved people deeply. Her performance got her a third Oscar nomination in just 3 years. The movie also became a classic sports film and got a lot of attention at award shows. In 1987, Glenn played a role that changed everything for her career. She acted as Alex Forrest in Fatal Attraction. At first, the filmmakers didn't think Glenn was right for the role. They wanted other actresses like Deborah Winger or Barbara Hershey. But Glenn worked hard to prove she could do it. She even talked to psychiatrists to understand her character better and created a backstory for Alex. Filming the movie wasn't easy. There was a violent scene with Michael Douglas where Glenn hit her head on a bathroom mirror. She had to go to the hospital because she got a concussion. While she was there, doctors told her she was pregnant with her daughter. Another tough moment came when the filmmakers decided to change the ending. Glenn didn't like the new ending because she thought it made Alex look like a villain instead of a tragic character. She argued with the studio for 2 weeks, but finally agreed after another actor, William Hurt, convinced her to go along with it. The new ending had Alex dying in a dramatic way, which audiences liked more than the original ending. The movie became a huge hit and even created the term bunny boiler because of a shocking scene involving a pet rabbit. It also got 6 Oscar nominations and made Glenn a Hollywood icon. Glenn Close's Broadway journey began with a major success in 1984 when she starred in Tom Stoppard's play The Real Thing at the Plymouth Theatre. She played the role of Annie, a character navigating love, marriage, and artistic struggles while being involved in an affair. The play had a fantastic team, with Jeremy Irons as her co-star and Mike Nichols as the director. Glenn's performance was so powerful that it earned her the Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play. The production itself was a huge success, with 12 Tony nominations and a run of 566 performances. Opening on January 3, 1984, it was a hit from the start. It also won the Tony and Drama Desk Awards for Outstanding New Play, making it even more special. In 1992, Glenn took on another intense role in Death and the Maiden, a psychological thriller by Ariel Dorfman. She played Paulina Salas Escobar, a former political prisoner confronting the man she believed tortured her. The play opened at the Brooks Atkinson Theatre and was part of a tough Broadway season. Glenn's portrayal was raw and emotionally powerful, showing her incredible depth as an actress. That same year, she also hosted the 46th Tony Awards at the Gershwin Theatre, making it a busy but rewarding time for her. She won her second Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play for this role, joining a select group of actresses who have won multiple Tonys in the same category. One of Glenn's most famous roles came in 1994 when she starred as Norma Desmond in Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical Sunset Boulevard. The show opened at the Minskoff Theatre on November 17, 1994, and made history with record-breaking ticket sales. Glenn's performance as the delusional silent film star was unforgettable. During one preview, she stopped the show to address audience members taking flash photos, showing her dedication to the performance. The production was a massive success, running for 977 performances and closing in March 1997. Glenn's work earned her a third Tony Award, putting her among the few actors to win Tony Awards in 3 different decades. Years later, in 2017, she returned to the role at the Palace Theatre. Once again, she stopped a performance when people took photos, proving her commitment to keeping the magic of theatre alive. Glenn Close has had an interesting and complex romantic life, marked by 3 marriages and divorces. Her first marriage happened in 1969 when she was just 22. She married Cabot Wade, a musician she met while performing in a musical troupe. This marriage did not last long, ending after only 2 years in 1971. Glenn later shared that this marriage was connected to a religious group called moral rearmament, and she felt it was more of an arranged marriage than a choice she made herself. After this, Glenn decided to attend the College of William and Mary, where she felt she started discovering who she really was. Her second marriage came many years later, in 1984, to a businessman named James Marlis. James was highly educated, with degrees from Harvard, Oxford, and the University of Chicago, and he had founded a company called Union Capital Corporation. Despite his impressive background, their marriage also didn't last. They divorced in 1987. During this time, Glenn made an important observation about relationships, saying that too many women define themselves by their partners. She admitted that in her marriages, she felt like she lost her own identity. Her final marriage was in 2006 to David Evans Shaw, a biotech engineer. They had a small ceremony in Maine and were married for 9 years. This marriage ended in 2015, and their divorce was described as mutual and friendly. Glenn's publicist even clarified that Glenn did not initiate the divorce. Between her marriages, Glenn had a significant relationship with producer John Stark, and together they had a daughter, Annie, in 1988. Glenn later revealed in an emotional interview that her struggles with relationships stemmed from her childhood experiences. Growing up, she was part of a religious group that caused her deep emotional and psychological trauma, which made it hard for her to maintain lasting romantic relationships. One of the most important relationships in Glenn's life is with her daughter, Annie Stark. Annie was born on April 26, 1988, and grew up in suburban Bedford, New York, on the family estate called Beanfield. Despite Glenn's fame, Annie described her childhood as normal, thanks to her parents' efforts to keep her grounded. She loved being outdoors, spending time in nature and with animals. Annie even stayed close to her high school friends over the years. In 2018, she got married at the family estate. Annie followed her mother's footsteps into acting and worked closely with her on the film The Wife. In the movie, Annie played the younger version of Glenn's character. Glenn trusted Annie completely with this role and told her that her performance would shape the entire character's story. This professional connection deepened their already strong bond. Glenn considers Annie her closest confidant and often asks for her opinions on important matters. Glenn once said she admires Annie for being fiercer than she is and values the fresh perspective Annie brings. In 2019, Glenn made a big decision to move to Bozeman, Montana. She chose to live on the funky north side of town, close to her sisters Jessie and Tina, because her sister Jessie was going through a big trouble. Jessie Close lived with undiagnosed bipolar disorder for more than 50 years, facing intense manic episodes and deep depression. Her first psychotic break happened when she was 21 in Washington, D.C. She saw a frightening hallucination of herself sitting on her own bed. Throughout her life, Jessie went through 5 failed marriages, battled substance abuse, and took dangerous risks. Her family thought she was just being wild and irresponsible, not realizing it was a serious mental health issue. In their wealthy Connecticut family, mental illness was misunderstood, and her struggles were seen as personal flaws. Jessie didn't get diagnosed until 2004 at the age of 51. By then, she had faced years of torment, including hearing voices that told her to kill herself over and over. These voices pushed her into extreme depression, which she described as beyond blackness. She often stayed awake for days, only to crash into unbearable sadness. Jessie's son, Callan Pick, also dealt with serious mental health challenges. He was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder which combines symptoms of schizophrenia and mood disorders. This created a clear link between their struggles, showing how mental illness ran in the family. Callan spent nearly 2 years at McLean Hospital, the same place featured in Girl, Interrupted, before his condition stabilized. At first, Jessie blamed herself for Callan's diagnosis, thinking she had passed her own flaws to him. But their shared experiences brought them closer. Today, they have a strong bond, and Callan is often the first person Jessie calls when things get tough. His journey to recovery was so inspiring that when he shared his story with lawmakers in Washington, it helped change how mental health issues are viewed and supported. One of Jessie's darkest moments came on New Year's Eve in 2001. While her family was asleep, she thought about ending her life. She went to her husband's truck and considered using his gun. What stopped her was the thought of her children. She pictured their faces and realized the pain her death would cause them, calling it a lifelong curse. A couple of years later, in 2003, Jessie finally opened up to her sister, Glenn, about her constant suicidal thoughts. This confession was a turning point. Within a week, Jessie was admitted to McLean Hospital in Boston, where she began receiving proper treatment. Glenn later admitted she feared she was very close to losing Jessie, knowing how often people with bipolar disorder die by suicide. Mental illness had affected the close family for generations. Their mother's side of the family showed a clear pattern. Their mother's uncle had schizophrenia, a half-uncle died by suicide, and their grandmother struggled with depression. Their mother, described as a mosaic of different traits, carried the genetic risk for mental illness and passed it down to Jessie, who then passed it to Callan. This made Glenn realize she had to do something. She didn't want to just talk about it. She wanted to make a real difference. But she knew it would only work if her family stood by her. So they all agreed to take this journey together. In 2010, Glenn took a big step and co-founded an organization called Bring Change to Mind, or BC2M for short. This group is all about breaking the stigma around mental health. They've done incredible work, like creating 7 public service announcements that have reached over 4 billion people. These messages focus on reducing stigma and spreading understanding about mental health. BC2M doesn't just guess what works. They team up with top scientists to make sure their programs are effective. What started as a small idea has now grown into a national movement. They run creative programs and campaigns, and even host big events like Revels and Revelations. This event brings together stars and supporters, and in 2024, Amy Poehler is set to receive a special award for spreading joy and hope. The organization's focus on science makes sure everything they do is backed by the latest research, so people can trust the resources they offer. One of the most impressive things BC2M has done is grow their educational programs. It all began in 2015 with just 25 schools in the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, they've expanded to 540 schools in 43 states, reaching over 100,000 students. Schools that join get a lot of support, like a $500 grant for activities, free access to the Headspace meditation app, and an online portal full of resources. The program is making a real impact. A lot of students, over 61.5% of graduating seniors, said they want to work in mental health-related fields after being part of it. BC2M also takes the time to see how well their programs are working. They've held 52 small group discussions with student leaders and done detailed surveys. The results show students are learning more about mental health and changing how they think about it. Glenn Close's move to television changed her career in a big way. It started in 2005 with her role in The Shield. She was on the show for 13 episodes, and her performance impressed everyone. including FX executive John Landgraf. During a casual conversation, Glenn told him, "If you ever think of something in New York, let me know." This simple request led to her most famous TV role. Within a year, she was offered a part in Damages, and she accepted after reading the pilot script. Damages aired from 2007 to 2012, lasting 5 seasons on FX and DirecTV. The show was about big legal battles and had a complex, non-linear way of telling stories. Each season focused on one major case, while also exploring the relationship between Glenn's character, Hattie Hughes, and Ellen Parsons, played by Rose Byrne. Glenn's role as Patty, a tough and ruthless lawyer, was praised by critics and fans. She didn't know how the story would end, so she discovered the plot one episode at a time, just like the viewers. The show had an incredible cast, including Ted Danson, William Hurt, Martin Short, and John Goodman, which made it even more special. After Damages, Glenn returned to film with 2 major roles. In Albert Nobbs, 2011, she played a woman pretending to be a male butler in 19th century Ireland. Glenn didn't just act in the movie, she also co-wrote the screenplay and contributed an original song. She had a deep connection to this character, as she had played the role years earlier in a stage production and even won an Obie Award for it. Her next big movie was The Wife, 2017, which became one of her best-known works. The film was about a woman named Joan Castleman, who questions her life choices while traveling to Stockholm with her husband, who is receiving a Nobel Prize. Glenn's performance was described as powerful and subtle, showing deep emotions without saying much. This role brought her many awards, including a Golden Globe, Screen Actors Guild Award, Independent Spirit Award, and Critics' Choice Movie Award. She was also nominated for an Academy Award and a BAFTA for the role. Glenn is now working on an exciting new project for Netflix called Remarkably Bright Creatures. The film is based on a best-selling book and tells the story of a widow who works as an aquarium janitor and becomes friends with a giant Pacific octopus. The project has big names attached to it, including Sally Field in the lead role and Olivia Newman as the director. Netflix, which had success with the octopus-themed documentary My Octopus Teacher, is producing this movie. Glenn continues to choose deep, character-driven stories that captivate audiences.